Hey my lovelies, welcome to another true crime story and makeup. Even though my makeup is pretty simple today, not too glamish, I have a pretty extreme murder story for you guys today, so stay tuned and watch the whole story to know what actually happened to this poor little girl in Japan. So stay tuned and do like and subscribe. So this story happened in Japan, and this happened to a girl named Junko Furuta, who was 17 years old and she was a high school student. Junko Furuta was a very likable person. She was, as I said, a high school student, and she also did a part-time job on the side, you know, like any other kid would do. Junko Furuta was quite popular in her school. She was a very good student, meaning her education was quite good, like her grades and everything were very good. She was well behaved. She was not one of those people that would do drugs, drinking, or like into partying, like, you know, those school students are like into, and she was a very good and behaved girl. Junko Furuta was very strong on her feet. She would not easily give in to peer pressure, and which means by, you know, like some students, you know, they give into peer pressure and just follow along with people who do, like, you know, these, you know, students that do like these bad activities like alcohol drinking, partying, you know, doing stuff without parents' consent. But Junko was, you know, as I said, a very well behaved student, good grades, wasn't into all this partying and stuff, was very strong on her feet, means, you know, she was all around a very good person. On November 25th, 1988, Junko Furuta was on her way home after finishing her part-time shift, and she was passing through some hedges when a boy her age kicked her bike, and, you know, she fell on the floor, and a boy was standing across the street who came by to help her get up and was kind enough to offer her to, you know, drop her home, as, you know, all the situation that happened to her was not quite nice. So he was like kind enough, like offering her like, I'm gonna drop you home so you're safe and you reach home, and she, you know, politely accepted. The boy that was dropping Junko home was actually a very evil dude. His name is Hiroshi. The reason why I call him evil is because he unknowingly, like, he didn't let Junko know that he was not, you know, bringing her to her home. He was bringing her to an abandoned warehouse where his behavior, you know, automatically changed. He was pushing her, shouting at her, which was not him a while ago when he was helping her. As his behavior changed, and while he was shouting and, you know, being angry at her, he was saying that he had connections with some mafia in Japan, which he can, if she doesn't do what he says, he will ask the mafia people who has connections with him to kill her. And Junko Furuta had no other options but to listen to this guy named Hiroshi and do whatever he said. Then the guy named Hiroshi took Junko inside the abandoned warehouse and raped her, and then afterwards he took Junko to a hotel nearby and raped her 2 times more. He also didn't let Junko leave for the night, and that's when Junko realized who actually Hiroshi was and what his intentions were. She remembered that Hiroshi actually asked her out in school, and she declined politely because obviously she wasn't into the guy, which could be the reason that Hiroshi had hate feelings for Junko. Because as I've read, Hiroshi's character is like one of those kids that don't take no for an answer, and because Junko said no to him because she didn't like him, it made him or triggered something in his mind. Hiroshi then took Junko to a park nearby where he met his 3 other friends named Jo, Shenzi, and Yashushi, and she, recognized one of the boys. It was the same boy who kicked her off her bike, which led to Hiroshi winning her trust and all the situation that happened with her. After the boys looked into Junko's bag trying to steal something they wanted to steal, but instead they found a diary with Junko's address on it, which gave them another thing to, blackmail her to do whatever they want. And because now that they have Junko's address, they could go like, if you don't do whatever they want her to do, they would tell the mafia that Hiroshi has connections with to kill Junko's parents. From the park, they asked Junko to pretend like she was one of the boys' girlfriend, just in case the parents ask who she is. But to my surprise, the parents do not even bother to ask who this girl is that all these boys are bringing in. The parents didn't care to the point where Junko was at their house for more than a month. And the reason behind the parents for doing such ridiculous thing is that they were also afraid from their son Hiroshi. That is so surprising to know that parents are actually scared of their own son because of his connection to the mafia. Wow. Just wow. Now that Junko wasn't back home for a few days, and they called the cops and told them to have a search party for their daughter because she didn't come home, which made the boys worried a lot, because obviously if the police started tracking the clues, they will be at the house, at Hiroshi's house very soon. So they made Junko call her parents and say that she was okay and that they had to, call off the search party because, she was okay. And this is what the parents did. They asked the police to not search for their daughter, and she was okay, and which is even more sad because this made Junko even more hopeless, because now nobody is searching for Junko. Nobody knows that she's in trouble and she needs help. Oh my god, I feel so hopeless even talking about it. Let me put on some mascara, and then I have like a huge list of what Junko had to endure to, I don't know what the boys were even trying to do. They were below 18 years old. Can you even, like what I'm about to say, you won't even be able to imagine like young kids, they're like kids, could do such things. I am like speechless, very speechless. Hauled off on searching Junko. The boys tortured Junko to the point a normal human's imagination cannot imagine. She was starved, beaten, raped multiple times a day, and it was believed in these 40 days she was raped over 400 times. 400 times. Again, I'm warning you, it is a bit too extreme. So if you guys do not want to listen, please go ahead and skip a few minutes so you guys don't have to listen to such torture. That poor little innocent girl was hung from the roof, and they would punch her like a punching bag. they would ask her to lay on the floor and throw heavy objects like dumbbells on her stomach. They would burn her from cigarettes, lighters, and candles like candle wax. And I have like a huge list. They would force her to eat her own feces, drink her urine, eat insects. The boys would even hold her head on the ground, and one of them would jump on her head, which made her nose bleed so much to the point she could not breathe. If that wasn't enough, they would force other objects into her private area, like her, lady part, that made her bleed from her internal organs. And those objects were like light bulbs, like iron rods, cigarettes, and even, I cannot believe this, those like fireworks. They would put it inside her private parts and even light the fireworks up. Just imagine how much pain she would have, have had to, go through just to protect her parents and herself from, I don't even know if the guy Hiroshi had any connections with the mafia. And not once did the boys have any ounce of humanity while doing this, because 44 days of torture, not one of those days that they stopped torturing her, beating her, raping her. It was just inhumane for like humans to even think about this. Like I just cannot imagine. And when I was researching, I was like praying to God, like, please, I just cannot believe this. And I just prayed so much for Junko, and I prayed so much for the people and young girls out there to be protected. It's just, and the list still goes on. They invited other friends. There were like 2 more friends that came by and joined in this process of, torturing her. But one of the friends told them that they felt guilty, but the boys, like Hiroshi and the other boys, forced one of the guys, the 2 new boys, one of the boys, they forced him to rape her, and he did it. But he was feeling guilty, and when he went home, he told his elder brother, which made the elder brother to tell his parents, and the parents luckily called the police and said that some boys were doing this to an innocent girl at their house. You better go and check it out. Luckily, the police listened to the parents of that boy who felt guilty. The police went to Hiroshi's house, and the parents of Hiroshi answered the door, and the police asked them if there was a girl who was enduring such inhumane torture. And the parents were like, there's no girl here, nobody's being tortured, you can even come in and have a look. But the police said that you guys invited us in, that is enough proof for us to not go inside and check. I rolled out of this world when I heard that the police had an option to go inside, check if there was a girl being tortured. But no, they were like, I'm speechless. Like, what? As I said in my previous video, not everyone is lucky with the police, not everyone gets justice.
Because some policemen are just lazy.
One day, Junko was lucky enough to find a phone in the house where the boys were busy, and she had a chance to call the police. But before she could, talk to the police on the phone, Hiroshi caught her. And this pissed Hiroshi off, and he tortured Junko even more. Oh my god, I'm gonna tell you how he tortured her. They assaulted her with a glass bottle, which made her bleed from inside, which led her to start convulsing because she was bleeding heavily inside. The boys thought that she was faking the convulsions, which led them to put some kind of liquid which would set fire easily. They threw the liquid on Junko and set her legs on fire while she was convulsing. Her torture was so bad that she begged Hiroshi and the boys to just kill her. She begged that, please just kill me. Junko was in so much pain after being tortured for so many days that she could no longer control her bowel movements, which gave the boys more reason to hate her. Due to all the injury and trauma that Junko endured, her body could not keep the food in her body. She would vomit out the food when she would eat something, which even more, created hate for her in the boys' eyes. Junko was almost to the point of being unrecognizable with so much bruise and trauma to her body that if her family saw her now, they would not recognize her as Junko. Due to all this torture, Junko was, in a very bad shape, which led the boys to lose the attraction to Junko that they had before, which made them to go out and find another girl to rape, which they actually did rape another girl when they still had Junko with them at Hiroshi's house. Bored, and they thought, they could play a game with Junko. Junko won, but it was not very lucky for her because the boys were very pissed afterwards, which they started hitting her, beating her too much, to the point all the wounds on her body started opening. There was pus in the wound because nobody was caring for it the right way. It grossed out. Now the boys put on plastic bags on their hands and taped them up, and they still continued to beat her. And they continued to hit her, which made her start convulsing again. And the boys, again, they thought she was faking it, and they set her on fire again. Beating, the setting on fire, lasted for 2 whole hours. And at this point, Junko was unresponsive. The boys thought maybe it was one of those attacks that Junko used to have when they were torturing her before. She would go unconscious and then come back to consciousness after a few hours, after the torture, and they thought she would come back again after this torture. But on 4th Jan 1989, Junko passed away. From all the torture, she just finally went away. Now Hiroshi and the boys had to dump the body because now they have a dead body at their place. So Hiroshi called his elder brother and told him everything they did to Junko, and they decided they would put Junko's body in a travel bag, and they put her in a big drum and put cement around her body, which they waited for the cement to get hard, and they dumped the drum. 3 weeks later, the boys were arrested. The police had another 2 murders that they were investigating, and they thought maybe the boys were also involved in that murder since they raped this girl. And when they were questioning the boys about the rape with that girl, they were also investigating about a murder, which in Hiroshi's mind, he knows that he murdered someone, but he murdered Junko, not the other girl. So Hiroshi thought that maybe one of the boys, one of the friends that, helped him carry out all the torture on that poor innocent girl, spilled all the beans on him, So he thought maybe I should, you know, tell the police everything so, you know, they wouldn't punish him harder. You know how you see on the television that, you know, the criminal is like, I'm gonna tell you everything, but you have to lower my sentence type of thing. So he told the police everything about the murder of Junko and the torture, which the police, you know, obviously weren't talking about Junko. They were talking about something else that the boys did not have connections with. So I feel like the police got this way easy. They had to do nothing. So the next day, finally, they found Junko's body in a drum covered with cement. The body was so deformed to the point that the only way to identify that it was Junko Furuta was by fingerprint. All the friends were arrested, and to be honest, I do not even want to tell how much of them even got the, you know, jail sentence, because they were all let very easily go. All of them were underage, so they were let go very easily. You know, they had, you know, some had 20 years, some had a few years of, you know, sentence, jail sentence. And I don't even want to just, you know, clearly say who got what, because I feel like it's unfair to Junko that, you know, they didn't get the punishment that they were supposed to get. I mean, I'm no one here to judge, but you can judge yourself. You know, that was so inhumane. Like, if 17-year-old boys could do so much to a human, I cannot imagine when they come into their real senses, when they get older, you know, what will they do then? So if I was, you know, the judge, I would, you know, I would think about all the other girls that I would protect, and, you know, I would give them a longer sentence, longer punishment. But who am I? I just really feel for Junko. Like, I'm just so upset for her. She did not deserve this at all. And you would be surprised to know that, you know, maybe they're still living in Japan. It's, if you think about it, you know, they might have a family, and, you know, they might still be living till now just freely, but they, you know, taken somebody's life without even thinking a second about her. And just very, like, I just had to add this. One of the boys, you know, their mother vandalized Junko's grave because the mother thought, you know, Junko ruined their son's life. I mean, you can judge for yourself who messed up whose life. And yeah, I feel like that's the end of this true crime story. This is just such a depressing one. It's अगर chance सुना है तो जाओ. Stay tuned for my next true crime story and makeup series. Bye!